again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection Show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Thanks for being here for today's episode. My name is Emma, your host for today. I have with me self-published author Eric Guilmette. Eric is a full-time actor, producer, and poet known for his presence on romantic novel covers and acting in many domains, commonly as a romantic lead. He has been writing romance for 5 years, and he has just released his first poetry book, Sex and Oatmeal. Hi, Eric. How are you today? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great, Emma. Thank you for the introduction and for having me.
Yeah, of course. Congrats on the release of your poetry book. Can you tell us about it?
Thanks. Yeah, I have a copy here. So the book is titled Sex and Oatmeal, which really you need to uncover with inside the book. But it was a long time coming. It took me 5 years to write because I didn't know I was writing a book for the first 4 years that I was writing poetry. And then the final year, I really started to take it seriously, and I wanted to make sure that I put something out that I'm very proud of, and I did, and I have.
Yeah. And what inspired you to create this poetry collection, and when did you first know it was time to put the poems together?
Um, I mean, like anyone, a girl inspired me to write poetry. And once I started writing and I felt that I was sufficient with my work, I felt like I was good and my words were good, then I started slowly sharing them on social media and, kind of did like a temperature check. And then I started to get a really beautiful response from my followers that was just like, this helped me through a really hard time, and it was poems that I never imagined people would connect with that way. And so I got to see the true power of what sharing poetry meant. And for me, like reading poetry was always my way of like connecting or making sense of things. And I just started to see other people do that with my words, and I was like, I should probably publish this. And then it built and built and built, and then here we are, and I released it towards the beginning of August of this year.
Nice. I like the way you just put it out into the world and saw what poems resonated with certain people, and what types of poetry or poems resonated with people that you were surprised by.
Yeah, the book itself is cut into 4 parts. So part one is warm oatmeal, which is love and being together and togetherness and all those nice warm fuzzy feelings that you feel around love. And the next chapter is cold oatmeal. So that is loss, heartbreak, longing,
Hmm.
all those really not so fun feelings.
Hmm.
Sex, which is pretty self-explanatory. And then the rest of life is chapter 4. And that's just kind of the culmination of what life is. And for me, I like to use poetry for myself as a means to go through every season of my life with. And
Hmm.
at first, I started writing poetry within that warm oatmeal category. I wrote it about a romance that I was experiencing and how beautiful it was. And then I went into a new chapter of my life when that romance ended and then changed what I was writing about. And so I then got to put all that out there, and everyone's connected with different chapters in different ways, which the power of social media is so cool because I get to tangibly see like what the poems mean to certain people and what they connect with. And I'll have some poems that are only like 5 words. I think my shortest poem in the book is five words, and some people
Oh,
are like,
wow.
"This is my favorite poem ever," and I'm like, "It's
Aw.
it's 5 words." And then I have some people that took my long form poetry and found it very connected to them,
Mhm.
and it's beautiful to see how something I wrote, and it might not have even been the intention of what I wrote it with,
Yeah.
was perceived and received on the other side. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And so your book has, all these themes that you mentioned, like longing and lost, and also the challenge of feeling very deeply in a world that resists vulnerability.
Yeah.
How do you feel about vulnerability and how is it present in your poetry and your themes?
Well, vulnerability is very present in my life. You mentioned it. I'm a full-time actor. I've been full-time acting now for almost 3 years. I mean, I've been acting for like 5+ years, but I've been pretty much full-time only acting for 3 years. And
Mhm.
I think art is vulnerability. And in order to fully be able to give your best performance or make something that's impactful, you need to be vulnerable. And I think it obviously takes a certain type of person to talk about their love and their love life and the things that they've gone through that might not be great, to be able to write that down and share it, especially when it's not a character. It's not. It is of course fiction to a degree, but it's not like I'm a writer who's using characters to tell my story. I'm using myself to tell my story.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's very obvious when you read it because you can hear my voice in my words. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain level of letting go of perception and expectation and just kind of trusting that your words that you're putting out there that represent you are something that you have to be comfortable with.
hmm And like you mentioned, your poetry book is very personal and obviously relatable with people from social media and hopefully readers that you've never met that connect with your book and purchasing it and things like that. How do you balance honesty with the desire to connect with readers of many different kinds?
Ooh, I love that question. I think one of the things that's been really like eye-opening to me is I am connecting with like such a wide, like vast audience.
Mm,
I like internationally too. I
absolutely.
the book itself, I at first when I decided to go through like publishing it, I was like, oh, I'll just put it on Amazon and see how it does. And then I was like, no, let's do this the right way. And then I was presented to Archway, which is a imprint of Simon and Schuster, and they're like, no, like we'll get your book out there like internationally, and it'll be able to be bought in France and Germany and all these other places. And I was like, all right, maybe I should do that, and I did, and I've been tagged on my Instagram story like with the book on in a picture in like 21 different countries.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I mean,
That's crazy.
I'm very blessed. I have a good fan base, which again is from my acting side and from the modeling side and all of that. But like to see the response of how many people not just bought the book, but connected with the book all over the world has been insane. And so, in terms of being honest, like I have to be honest with my words because it's my vulnerability that is allowing my readers to feel something that they felt inspired to, keep reading or read it again or write their own poetry. I've seen so many fans that have like taken like my words as a inspiration motive to write their own words and share it on their social media. And it's like there's no better compliment than that when you inspire people to do what you did, you know?
Yeah. How is the art of acting different than the art of poetry writing for you?
Mm, you're
Major
good at this. You
difference.
ask good questions.
Thank you.
You're like I've done this before.
Few times.
So like acting, what's great when you're playing a character is you, for the most part, can go through building that character and acting that character without consequences because it's a very safe space because you're playing a character and it's scripted and everything that your character has to go through, however great or horrible your character may be, there's no consequences to your actions when you are acting.
Hmm.
But when you're writing, like you still have to have a level of um, like, okay, I'm gonna write this, but can I share this? Like
Hmm.
I have probably 100 something poems that didn't make it into my first book because there's a level of what I want to share for everyone else and a level of what I just want for me. And so for me, when I'm writing here, this is therapy. This is writing is me getting my words out there, and it's therapeutic, and it's everything. And it's not always for public display.
Yeah.
Whereas acting truly is a an audience facing medium, and if I'm going to act, like someone is going to see it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's like this is poetry is for me in here, and acting still does a lot for here, but it's more outward facing.
Okay. And you describe in your book coming of age, but not as once, but again and again. Can you talk about like what that means to you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 31 years old, and I feel like I've lived like several lifetimes already, which is a very, I feel blessed to have that sort of experience with my life. You know, I've been to 40 something countries. I've been a full-time model and actor. I've worked in finance. I used to be a professional bodybuilder. I've done so much in my life. And so, um, this book specifically kind of encapsulates my last 6 years. And I feel like even within those 6 years, I've re resurfaced several different times. Same person at the core, but just different versions and iterations of me.
Mhm.
And I think that's actually how I knew that I was done writing this book. I'm currently writing my second book.
Mhm.
And I knew that I was done with this when my writing started to change. I noticed like the way that I wrote, the stories I started to tell just didn't necessarily match the tone of what I wrote previously. Um,
Mhm.
I started writing a lot more long form poetry, and maybe that's my maturity, coming through my art. And so, yeah, it's been really great to have writing because writing isn't a natural tool that I found. I went to school for math and economics, and that was my what my degrees are in, and I don't even technically use them. I mean, I'm a full-time actor and poet and 900 other things, but writing wasn't something that I was like, oh yeah, you should be a poet, you should publish. It was just something that kind of happened. And anyways, so it's been really nice just to have like this medium as a way to express and feel and make sense of my life.
Mhm. Did you ever kind of like enjoy writing growing up, like just like in English or no? Not.
No, I wasn't even good like at that. I think my if I like looked at my high school transcript, I'm pretty sure my lowest grades were in English.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, I mean, it would be funny to go back and find one of my high school, writing or English teachers
Yeah, essays.
and be like, by the way,
I remember.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so how do you, another thing you mentioned in your book is electricity and how do you capture that electricity of themes in your book like love and loss without turning away from like the messiness of it?
Well, I I mean, I guess you can kind of, it's such a big level question because like love is messy,
Mm-hmm.
and love is never perfect. Of course, you can romanticize it, and I think poetry allows you to slightly romanticize a moment and build upon it. Like as much as I'm writing from personal experience in most of my book, I also sometimes will just turn it into a little bit of fiction and let what didn't happen in
Creativity.
my life kind of go. And
Yeah.
and so like but the core of love truly is a messy experience, but in the best ways. And it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be perfect, and it's within those imperfections that you really find a true love, and that's what I've luckily found a couple times in my life, enough to write a lot about it.
Yeah. When you mentioned like messy, I obviously thought of your book title and oatmeal can be like really messy. Like for example, like in the microwave when you like heat it up and then it gets everywhere. It's so
Oh,
messy. So
it's
that's a good I love your title and just the concept of it and the oatmeal and the parts. That's cool.
Thanks. Yeah, it's funny. I don't think I don't think I actually have a poem about oatmeal in the book. But I knew that this was going to be the title for like 5 years because I said
Oh, really?
if I ever write a book, this is what I'm going to title it. Um, and obviously, so oatmeal has to have some level of connection to my life, and it does. But yeah, it's funny if you think about like you said, microwaving oatmeal and it boiling over and just being everywhere, and then you're like, well, now I have a goopy, warm
Yeah.
mess sitting in my microwave, and I have to clean up
Yeah.
the mess.
Yeah. So you describe your poetry collection having a very distinct voice, full of what you call Ericisms. How would you describe your poetry style?
So I definitely started with a lot more short form, like truly keeping poems less than 50 words. And then I actually started writing a lot of long form poetry, and within those long form poems started finding small little short forms within the long form. And um so like what's cool is, I said Ericisms. That was like I'm doing the audiobook right now for my book, and that'll actually be, I'm not sure when this interview is going to come out, but that'll be coming out in probably the next 2 weeks, which is exciting.
Oh, cool.
And on like my Facebook and sometimes on Instagram and my TikTok, I do a lot of readings of poems from my book. And the reason why is because I think when you can hear the author's voice behind it, especially the author's voice, you can feel what they were feeling when they wrote it. Um, and I'm lucky that I have an acting background, so I know how to
Yeah, it's
do
perfect.
that, right?
Yeah.
I do voiceover work as well. So it's kind of was a perfect fit, but I didn't want to put that out. I didn't want to put my audiobook out as soon as the book came out because I wanted people to have their own perception of it first. I wanted
Mhm.
people to have a chance to read it, make their own, because I've had my poems, this is like a really cool phenomenon that I've experienced is like when people read my poems back to me, and then I'm like, and I hear the way they say it, and it's different than the way I wrote it. And I'm like, oh,
Oh, yeah.
like I didn't even think of it like that. But you took this sad poem and it sounds happy. So,
Wow.
it's been very cool to experience. But yeah, trying to my voice is distinct throughout. That's what I'll say is like you can hear my voice in like the majority of this book.
Mhm. Yeah. And so as far as like your writing routine or process, do you have a particular process that you had for writing your poetry that made you like tap into those like that like emotional side?
Um, no.
No.
Uh, I I definitely write from personal inspiration.
Mhm.
Um, I, I, I truly don't know how authors are like, I have a deadline. I have to get this, I have to get, 10,000 words in the next like 24 hours. And I'm like, that sounds
Awful.
impossible
Yeah.
because, and that's probably why I write poetry is because I can write when I'm inspired and I have to make sense of something that's going on in my life, it's very easy for me to write. I can write 5 poems in like, 2 hours of just word vomiting onto a page. But
Hmm.
that's my process is I use my own life to influence when a
Hmm.
poem needs to be written. And I think that's probably also why it took me so long to
Hmm.
come up with my first book. But ironically, I stopped writing this book in like February of this year.
Hmm.
And my next book that I'm working on is like close to being done in terms of manuscript. And
Hmm.
it's only been, what is it? It's October, so it's been like 8 months since then.
Wow.
So
That's fast.
yeah, so I've had an eventful 8 months, clearly enough to write about.
Yeah. And so how did you know when this book was done, like it was completed? Because I know it's been a journey getting it, completed, but how did you know that it was like finally done?
It was really in the voice of my words. It was when I saw the way that I was writing, and especially when I was doing the design, I was working with the designer, who's
Cool.
phenomenal from Portugal for this book, who designed it. And it was when I was like piecing things together for him to be able to go and design it. And I just like saw like a bank of poems that I had been writing, and I was like, these don't match this. Like these, they don't blend. And so I was like, I think it's time to call it a day on this book and move on
Mhm.
to that next one, which is very refreshing too when you finish something and you want to keep writing, like to have
Mhm.
kind of a blank slate that I'm not trying to form it into warm oatmeal or cold oatmeal or sex
Yeah.
or like one of those chapters. I kind of had the ability to say, okay, I can make this about anything. Let me go write.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did you meet your designer for your book organically, or had you known them before writing your book?
I met them on, I think it's called Reedsy or Redsy. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it was just like a site there you can go and interview people that
Oh,
are
cool.
designers. I think there's like voiceover actors on there. There's cover designers. There's illustrators. There's all those things. And anyways, I just did my homework and found someone who I saw their work, and I was like, oh, this is very much in line with what I want. And then it's that like 29 step back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, where I was like, I want it to feel like this. I want it to be black and white. I want it to,
Mhm.
900 things. And the irony is he made my vision even better than I thought it would look. And that's when you actually have someone that you're supposed to be working with, is
Yeah.
when it's really good.
Mhm. And so who is this book for? Did you have like an age range in mind when you were writing it, or afterwards, or would you say it's for everyone, or who did you specifically want it to target, I guess?
I would say for the most part, it is for everyone.
Mhm.
I encourage. I know poetry isn't necessarily like the sexiest thing within the literary world, but I encourage people just in general to read a poem every so often, just because you know most people turn to poetry when they're going through like those monumental times of their life, which is usually not the best things. Like when
Mhm.
you're going through loss or someone
Mhm.
passed or whatever, and you're trying to make sense of their loss, that's when people turn to poetry.
Mhm.
Or if you're in love and then you like start to read a poem about love, like you're like, oh, this is it. This is what it feels like.
Mhm.
Um, and I encourage people just to, even if you just have like the ability to read 5 poems a day, those those poems may help you just have a fresh perspective on your day and your life. And so I wrote this. Obviously, I have a huge audience that comes from my work as a romantic lead in films and from romance novels. So it's all very cohesive. It's like I've modeled for romance novel covers. I act in romance dramas, and I write romance with poetry. And so, like,
Mhm.
obviously, people who like romance will vibe with this book, but also just anyone can find something in here to make them be like, oh, I I agree. Maybe I
Mhm.
can fall in love today at a coffee shop?
What would you say to someone that maybe wants to get into poetry writing, or maybe comes from a background like you that has more of a mathematical, career, or and hasn't really tapped into any sort of like creative writing or things like that, or maybe want to start doing that? What would you say to them?
Uh, I would say look inward. Turn your gaze inward for just a second, especially if you're not someone who does that often.
Mhm.
Take the time just to go in. Um, and once you're in there and you start to make sense of who you are and what you're feeling and things that you want in life and things that you don't want and things that you're truly experiencing firsthand, like
Mhm.
allow it to come out. And whatever art form that is, if it is poetry, if it is writing your poetry, write it down, but write it for you. Just write
Mhm.
it as a reflection of you and your life, and don't share it right away. Like, unless you feel really inspired to and you feel like you have a safe space to do so. But do it for you, let that pour out of you. And once you do, build upon it. If you want to keep doing it, if it doesn't feel like you're forcing it, that's probably a good sign that you're in a good place.
Yeah. And like you mentioned earlier, it was like kind of therapeutic for you. I feel like writing in general, if you're like journaling or writing poetry or trying to write some sort of story, I feel like it can be very therapeutic, free therapy.
Yeah, it's definitely therapy. Like Emma, I assume, do you write to a degree?
Yeah, I have.
What do you write?
I mean, when I was younger, I wrote poetry in high school, but I haven't written like a story or anything or like fiction, but I really have been always wanting to write like a children's book. So,
Hmm.
I definitely want to do that. I see that in my future eventually. But
That's cool. Yeah, I encourage you to do a children's book. My one of my friends does like children's. She just released like a children's music soundtrack thing, which is really
that's
cool. And like it's just one of those things where I think it is therapy. I mean, that's why people choose the arts is because it feels good to,
yeah, it does.
and so um, yeah, I encourage anyone to if you don't want to go to a therapist,
Yeah.
this art is a very free, like helpful way for you to do therapy on yourself.
Yeah, it also like I feel like just creating anything in general like gives you a sense of confidence a little bit too and kind of takes you out of like your world that you're in and just like you're so much more capable of, doing something than you think you are too. I'm sure you have realized that too with your second book coming. That's really exciting.
Yeah, you never know, and it's just fun all the parts of what started as me just writing poems because of a girl, all the parts of like what happened after, like I just can't even make sense of it. Like I have my own. I'm wearing it right now. I have my own poetry jewelry, so like
Oh,
I
cool.
have I've sold them all over the world. Like I have. There's a box of like, or 9 boxes of jewelry right here because I'm about to do my third launch, and
Hmm.
it has like 600 something pieces in it. And it's like that came from this. I started doing poetry prints when I go to conventions where I've like partnered with photographers to share my poems on art prints that people can put in their homes. And then, when I go to these things that I get to meet fans, they bring me like I have a box here that someone made that's engraved with my poems on it. So it's so cool to see what
Yeah.
everything turns into when all I was trying to do is just make sense of what I was experiencing when I started.
Yeah.
It really is a domino effect, and then you don't know where those dominoes lead, and
Yeah.
that's the
So
beautiful
cool.
thing about sharing your art.
If you could describe your poetry collection in 3 words, what would that be?
Raw, intimate, and refreshingly honest.
I love
I'm gonna
that.
make a third word that's a hyphen.
It counts.
Yeah.
And so you said it took you 5 years to write. So I don't know if I caught it. When did you start writing this book, or when did you like think about actually like publishing it?
Yeah, so I started writing poems like, actually almost more than 5 years ago. And then it was about, I want to say March or April of 2024 that I was like,
Okay.
I should publish a book. And then
Mhm.
I, dragged my feet because I didn't know what that looked like, and I was so busy with everything else going on in my life. But then by
Mhm.
like October of last year, so I guess about a year ago, I like had a manuscript done. It was organized with warm oatmeal, cold oatmeal, sex, and the rest of life, and I had all of that. But I still didn't really know how to go about it. And I worked with actually my management, my agent team from the acting side to kind of just do a temperature check of like what traditional publishers might be interested in, all that stuff. And
Mhm.
then it was around February that I knew that like this book was going to be published, and I knew that how I wanted to design it and all that. And yeah, I mean, you talked about the confidence that kind of comes from sharing your art and doing all of that stuff. It's like the confidence that comes from not knowing how to do anything that's involved with something, and then you actually take something A to B and you get it there.
Mhm.
It's like you kind of feel like you can do anything once you go into a world that you're not familiar with at all, and
Mhm.
you know, send it out and you do something and you're proud of it. I think that's it obviously takes a level of risk, but
Yeah.
the juice is worth the squeeze, if you will.
Hmm. Did you have a difficult part of your writing process at all?
For this book, yes. I really, it sounds weird. I like sad poems. Um, not not because they make me happy. But like sad poems to me are where you kind of find the most like visceral, like like you know that pain. Like other
Mhm.
people can relate to that pain in some way, shape, and form. And but that doesn't mean like it's like if you hear a John Mayer song and it's a sad song, it doesn't make you sad necessarily, but it just makes you potentially look inward and it makes you be like, oh, I felt that feeling.
Yeah.
I know
Makes you feel
that.
less alone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, for me, when I was writing certain sad poems, of course, it was because I was experiencing them,
Right. Yeah.
or I was allowing my mind to be like, "Hey, let me go back to that time that I experienced, heartbreak, and let me put myself, as an actor, I think I'm lucky that I'm like I kind of use substitution in my acting already. Like if I have to be sadly emotional about a scene."
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll put myself in the shoes of the character, but more often than not, I put myself in a situation of when I was experiencing that in my own life to be able to pull that out. And the same
Yeah.
thing holds true for writing. If I go back and I write about, sad poems, I have to feel that. And so I would say that that chapter, Cold Oatmeal, was the hardest to write because at first, when I was writing those things, it was very, very like raw and it was honest. It was truly,
Yeah.
I didn't hold back at all.
Yeah. Did you find some inspo from other poets? Do you have a favorite poet or yeah, you
Yeah.
can.
What was really cool, so what got me into poetry was Atticus. Atticus was and is my favorite poet. And the coolest thing was like I talked to their marketing team on their social media. Like I got to create some when I was a model, I got to create some cool jewelry images with his jewelry, which was also like the thing I was like, oh, I want to do my own jewelry when I make my own stuff. And then his team like sent me a copy of one of his books and was like, hey, take a picture of this next to your book, put it on social media, and we'll share it on our page. And I'm like, so like the person who I looked up to the most and got me into poetry, like I now get to kind of be a peer with. Like I felt very refreshed by that. And so
Yeah.
Atticus was definitely one of my biggest inspirations. Outside of there's Kirsten Robinson. Her writing is fantastic. Sheris Ed, Christopher Poindexter, Topher Kirby, Jacqueline Whitney, I'm blanking, Wilder poetry. There's a few, and I just once I started reading it, it really helped me just understand how you can tell a story through
Mhm.
words and because I don't have a traditional studying of this world. I just started writing because it felt good to do so, and so
Yeah, yeah, of
those have
course.
definitely been my biggest inspirations.
Yeah. And so what I know we mentioned a lot about your fan base and the feedback you've received about your books and your book. But is there like a really nice review that sticks out with you that you've received about your book so far?
I wish I could pick one.
I know, I feel like there's been so many I've heard about.
I've received so many, and I, I'm so humbled by the whole experience because I didn't know what this was going to be. I was just like, I just want to get the book out there, and like,
Yeah.
if a couple hundred people read it, great. Um, and more than a couple thousand people I know from seeing numbers have purchased the book and have read it and everything. And then from reading reviews on Amazon or wherever, like of course I get to see that. But the coolest thing is like because of being in the romance novel space and the romance drama space. I go to all these conventions where I meet fans and I sign now I'm signing copies of my book. I'm not signing copies of other books or
Yeah.
headshots or whatever. I'm signing my own book, which is amazing. And when I do so, I get to hear face to face from my readers what my words have meant to them. And I've had so many people that have lost their spouse and explained to me how there's a poem in here that I'm just thinking of one story in particular. There's a poem in here that talks about how like they're not gone. They live with you in, in the way you order your coffee, in like a wine-stained sofa cushion, in your favorites album on your phone, in the songs you listen to. It's like, and so I remember like several times people have told me like, that poem reminded them of that and all the beautiful memories. And there's been so many people have connected with every chapter, and they tell me these stories, and when you hear it, like, oh my God, it was so crazy. I was at a panel for the last thing I went to that was called Verticon, and it was right in the beginning of the end of September. And this
Mhm.
girl got on the microphone and talked about how she was, depressed and suicidal, and how she found my words through my book through a random Facebook post where I read one of my poems, and she was like, it helped me immensely through one of the darkest times of my life, and she was like, and I'm standing here right now, and I literally like ran across the room and gave her a hug. I was like, this
Oh
is,
my God.
so it's like
Amazing.
you never know what your art is going to mean to other people, and it's been really cool to have that tangible like ability to see it and hear it in person.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What has your family and friends thought about your book?
Um, my dad, it was so funny. My dad was like, sex and oatmeal. And he was like, I don't get it. And I was like, you're not gonna get it, Dad. And he was like, no, like explain it to me. And
Explain them.
I was like, I really, really like oatmeal. And he was like, I'm like, yeah, you're not gonna get it. But he's read it. My mom's read it. My family has read the book, and they connect with different parts of it, and they're just so proud of. I think anything I do. I think I could have.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I obviously know their opinion is biased, but I know that they genuinely are proud of what I've done. And my friends, my friends, they've known that I'm a poet and that I write poetry, and obviously I get being a guy who's I'm still like a guy at the end of the day. I obviously catch shit from them from time to time, but they're so supportive, and it's just been really cool to see even them be like, this poem actually helped me and made sense. Like, thanks,
Hmm.
man. And
Aw, that's
it's
great.
it's really cool. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm very 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 blessed with everyone I have in my life.
nice. And what would you say to someone that's working on their own first book?
Um, let's see. So I'm also a producer. I produce like TV miniseries and micro dramas. And whenever you produce something, it's not going to be what you think it is in your head. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be slightly different, maybe for better, maybe for worse, but it's not going to be your first or your second instinct in your head. And so if someone is working on their own book, and they are working on producing said book, just know that part of the vulnerability of you going through and writing your words down on the page, there's also a level of vulnerability of putting other people through the rest of it, because we're that's what it takes. That's really what um that's what this is. So
Mm-hmm.
be vulnerable, allow yourself to feel, and
Mm-hmm.
if it feels good to make it, just keep going with it. Don't tempt nature. Like, just allow
Yeah.
nature to do its thing.
Go with the flow. Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice for sure. So I know that you're working on your second book. What's next for you as a writer? Or do you have any other collections or creative projects going on right now?
Yeah, so I mean, my acting and my producing world is that's like my day to day. That's like truly it takes up all my time.
Mhm.
I write while I'm in traffic on the
Oh my
405
gosh.
in
Wow.
California. But in terms of writing, yeah, I so right now I'm working on the audiobook, which will be coming soon. I do have also a Kindle ebook that'll be coming as well. Those kind of go hand in hand. And then I have my second book, which I'm hoping to have released by middle of next summer. Again, I'm not gonna force it. If it gets there by then, great. But I don't have a deadline, so that's
Mhm.
nice. Um, I have all these cool because I think one thing that I understood by all the poets that I just named is to make poetry an experience, it needs to live on more than just a page. And so
Mm.
I have, like I said, I have jewelry, and I love them because they're little reminders of a poem or whatever. Like I'm wearing a ring right now that just says I'm okay. And on the inside it says, and that's okay. And so it's like all these little reminders of my work and my art. So through jewelry, I have, merchandise and all these different things that I just want people to be able to have a really cool thing to
That's
walk
cool.
around with. I've the reason I think when I knew that I wanted to publish a book is just from sharing it on my social media. I saw
Mhm.
people starting to get tattoos.
Mhm.
I have like
Great.
20 or 30 maybe somewhere in that range of people that have gotten tattoos of my words. And I'm like,
God.
what? This
That's
is
insane.
crazy.
That's so cool. That's like a whole new level. Like that's
Yeah, and
so awesome.
that's where I'm like, I love my fan base. They truly are like so supportive. But that's also when you know that you're making an impact in someone's life. Someone wants to tattoo things that
Yeah,
you
it
wrote,
means a lot to them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like I'm just gonna keep going with it,
I love
and
that.
I have my new jewelry release is coming out in probably like 10 days, and if I go through all 600 something pieces, because that's what's happened. I've done two releases so far, and they've sold out in like less than 10 minutes both times. And
Oh
so
wow.
if I go through this again and I sell out out in an hour, I need to rethink my life and let that take over in some regard and workspace in for that. But outside of that, in my non-literary world, I have movies that'll be coming out in different series and things that I'm really excited for. So yeah.
Nice, nice. I think that's all the time we have for today. I just have one last question, and what's the number one message that you hope readers take away from your book, or maybe the feeling that you hope readers have while walking away from your book?
I hope every reader is able to just open my book and find at least one poem or even just one line that makes them feel seen and makes them feel understood. And if they can connect with one poem, then I know that I did my job. Because I want everyone, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from or anything about you, I want anyone that picks up my book to be able to connect with something and feel understood and feel like they are like, oh yeah, that's me. So
Hmm.
if that
Yeah,
happens, then mission accomplished. Sex and Oatmeal was a success.
yeah. That's great. Is there anything else that you want to mention today? Do you have a website or do you want to share your social media so people can reach out to you?
Sure, yeah. My Instagram is at Eric Taylor Guilmette. I will say I have like thousands of fake accounts across all of social media, which is very,
Oh,
very annoying. I'm not Brad Pitt, but it's just one of those things. So be
yeah.
careful. If you don't
Okay.
see the check mark next to my name, it's not me. So I'll say yeah. So I have that. I have Facebook. And I do have TikTok, but getting verified on TikTok is apparently impossible. So, anyways, feel free to check out my stuff there. I also have my own personal website, which is eric-gilmet.com, which has all of my things that I'm working on in my life. And I'll also say, Emma, like, thank you. You are a phenomenal interviewer, and
Oh,
you
thank
you
you.
definitely should be doing this because you're a great
Oh,
listener, and yeah, you're amazing. So thank you.
oh, thank you so much. Well, you've been a great guest, and I appreciate your time.
Of course, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Well, If you out there would like to purchase Eric's book, you can head to archwaypublishing.com to purchase it through the online bookstore. It's also available on Amazon and Barnes& and Noble. And look for Eric's audiobook too that will be available soon. That's very exciting. And thank you so much, and I will see you next time.